This is Peter Griffin, and he is widely known for being somewhat of a family guy. Well, probably because of all the love and adoration that he shows to his wife and kids.
Dad! What is it? What's going on? I heard a noise. Is somebody downstairs?
Oh, God, Meg, you startled me. I'm sorry.
What the hell?
But many people don't realize that Peter actually loved playing football in his free time. And he was so good at it that even Tom Brady wanted to be his teammate. And that made Peter think about what his potential could be as a football player. So one day he decided he was going to take football seriously to see just how great he could possibly be. Which brings us to today, where we are putting Peter Griffin into College Football 25. We're going to see how this 400-pound beluga whale of a man does at running back, as we follow him on his road to glory. Now, to start his journey, Peter knew that he would only consider going somewhere where he had the chance to start right away, and he knows just how time-consuming football can be from his old playing days. So when thinking about his college decision, he knew he had to go somewhere that was also close to home to his wife and kids. And the celestial body that Peter was, you better believe that there was a lot of colleges looking to bring him in for his services. But ultimately, when it came down to it, Peter felt like it was most important for him to stay close to Rhode Island. So when it came to Peter Griffin's college decision, he decided to sign with the University of Massachusetts.
Good morning, good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning to you.
Peter Griffin is now officially in college football, and his coaches decided to make him the starter right away. And that was probably a smart idea, because going into Peter's first practice, the coaches realized that he closely resembled a human bulldozer, and the defense was having a hard time bringing him down even when there was extra guys on the field. So Peter was feeling real good about going into his first season as a college football player, and was ready to go out there and try to turn this UMass program around. But it all started here in his first game of the season, against Eastern Michigan. Now, to start his college career off, Peter Griffin got off to a slow start, partly because he was slow and fat and out of shape, and that wasn't necessarily contributing to him having a good first quarter. But Peter felt confident that he would eventually start figuring things out, and after Eastern Michigan gives UMass great field position before the end of the first, it becomes a great opportunity for Peter to get open in the flat and end up getting himself in the end zone for a touchdown, the first one of his college football career.
All right. I made a touchdown.
But Peter knew he was just getting started. Before halftime, Peter caught this screen pass and then immediately flipped the field, picking up a big first down for UMass in a drive that would end up in 3 points. In the second half, though, this quarterback was also making plays to move the team back downfield. And then eventually a handoff to Peter Griffin where he was able to power himself in the end zone for another touchdown would extend the lead to 10. But in a game where it seemed like the rest of the UMass offense was pretty much just taking the game off, like how do you drop this with your fingers literally stuck inside the ball? Yeah, it might be time to put the fries in the bag, buddy. But regardless of the weak-ass trashery that this UMass offense had put up this game, they still go on to win it 20-14. And Peter Griffin had led the way with only 44 yards on the ground, but 2 touchdowns. He had 82 receiving yards as well to put him over 100 total for the game, and would end up winning Offensive Player of the Week for his performance. Now, the following week, Peter let his advisors know very bluntly that he is not here for school, because he has a legacy that he is focused on building, and he's hoping he could do that this game by getting his first 100-yard rushing performance against Toledo. Now, this Toledo defense was definitely doing a good job containing Peter throughout the first quarter, stopping him on third down on multiple possessions, whether it be through the air or on the ground. It wouldn't be till later on in the second quarter where Peter would start finding running lanes to go through and power his way for first downs. He took the screen pass that got his team upfield inside the red zone in position for a score. And a couple plays later, the UMass tight end actually leaks out and becomes wide open for a touchdown to tie this game up at 7. And now in the second half, Peter was doing a much better job running the ball and controlling the clock. I mean, if you really look at Peter this half, he's running like a beast. He was out there saying, "Shablaka, wang," but they would make Peter fumble. And he was really feeling that hit. Peter was a tough guy though, so he'll be alright. And UMass was able to cap off the drive with a touchdown to the back of the end zone to make it a 14-7 ball game. And with 2 minutes left in this game, all it really takes is for Peter Griffin to help chew this clock, or get his team in the end zone for more points, to ultimately put this game away, with UMass going on to close this one out 21-10. With Peter having rushed for his first 100-plus yard game off 22 carries and a touchdown. Now, Peter was pretty excited to start becoming a leader for this UMass team, and he was working extremely hard to improve on his skills as the season progressed. And he was definitely going to need some of that skills going into UMass's next matchup against Buffalo. Now in this game, the UMass offense was once again struggling pretty mightily as they went 3 and out on back-to-back drives to start this game. And this continued into the second quarter where UMass still had 0 points. And it was looking to remain that way until after halftime where this UMass offense came to life. UMass was eventually able to get themselves right down towards the goal line, where about halfway through the fourth quarter, Peter was able to get around the edge in the end zone for a touchdown, cutting this lead down to 1 possession. And now with under 2 minutes left, Peter and this UMass... Damn, that was crazy, but damn! You might be able to tell what UMass is about to do based off that play, because Peter Griffin or this offensive line ain't messing around at this point. Or really, I should just say Peter ain't messing around, because these weak-ass bums let him get stopped in the backfield on 3 straight plays, sending this game to overtime where Buffalo only scored 3 points. So Peter knew that on this 1st and goal, all he had to do was just take this carry up the middle and pound his way in the end zone for a touchdown to allow UMass to escape Buffalo with a victory, as they finished this game 16-13. With Peter not going for a ton of yards on the ground, but he did have 12 receptions for 117 yards. And he was feeling great about the way that he was able to help his team close the game out. The following week though, Peter's academic advisor kept trying to get him to do some schoolwork or studying or something, but you see, Peter don't got no time for that. He's too busy hanging out with his daughter.
Hi, Dad.
But speaking of busy, Peter feels like he's about to get busy going into a matchup against one of the worst teams on the schedule, as the UMass Minutemen are set to face off against the UGF Pandas. Now Peter had realized pretty early on that there was potential in this game for him to have his way, because after he was able to say hey, it became pretty clear to Peter that UGF was a weak-ass team. So he was able to take this handoff and get himself in the end zone for a touchdown, but he didn't feel like he was even close to done yet. And he sure wasn't, because he would take this handoff around the edge before picking up a huge chunk of yardage and barreling through multiple defenders, eventually bringing his team by the red zone. A couple plays later, he takes another carry to an open lane and practically just walks in the end zone for another touchdown, now making this a 2-possession game. And this momentum for UMass would continue throughout the game for him, as Peter got in for another touchdown at the end of the third quarter. And then he went out for a swing pass where he got some really good blocks and was able to easily get himself in the end zone for another touchdown, making it a 28-6 game. And with Peter Griffin running wild the way that he has been all game, there isn't a whole lot that the Pandas can do without trying to sneak another man onto the field. So after UMass gets down to the goal line once again, and Peter rushes in the end zone for another touchdown on his day, that would pretty much put this game away, as UMass would go on to win this game 35-6. With Peter Griffin having his best rushing game by far, over 200 yards rushing with 5 touchdowns, and then rightfully so, earned himself his first National Offensive Player of the Week award. And of course, whenever somebody asks him who's to credit for this team's success, he will say himself. He was confident that he could eventually lead this program to greatness, and he's hoping he can help keep this team undefeated at least up until they reach Georgia, which will undoubtedly be the hardest game on their schedule by far. But for now, Peter had to keep helping his team take care of business, especially in their next game against Miami of Ohio. Peter Griffin started out this game running angry, picking up multiple first downs, and eventually bulldozing his way inside the goal-to-goal territory for UMass. And then one play later, he was able to air truck his way into the end zone for a touchdown, making this game 7-0. Another great thing about Peter Griffin's game is that he was really establishing himself in other areas of the offense, like he was becoming a very consistent pass catcher, but he was also out there doing a great job blocking, even though his quarterback would throw an interception that would get returned all the way to the crib for 6. By the end of the third quarter though, Peter was able to help make up for it by getting himself in the end zone for another touchdown, tying the game back up at 17. And for some reason they decided to take Peter out the game after this, and all of a sudden this game is heading into overtime. And Peter knows the only way to really win these is by getting in the end zone. So he starts bulldozing his way down towards the goal line, and a couple plays later he's able to dive his way in the end zone for a touchdown, taking the lead in overtime. And Miami actually went on to tie the game, but they didn't score any more points, which means that it would only take a field goal to put this game away. But it seems like Peter Griffin has other plans, as he took this ball around the edge and dove into the end zone for another touchdown to put this game away, as UMass would go on to finish off Miami of Ohio 37-31, with Peter Griffin once again being the catalyst for a victory, going for 130 rushing yards and 4 total touchdowns. And surprisingly, Peter once again won National Offensive Player of the Week. And the best part about it was that Peter hadn't reached anywhere near the potential he had as a player, and he definitely preferred spending time working on his game rather than being at home at the moment.
Hey, Lois, what's going on here?
Oh, it's my book club, Peter. Come, join us.
Oh, okay.
But now it's time for Peter to get into his next game, as he and the rest of UMass are set to face off against Northern Illinois. And to say UMass got off to a slow start would be an understatement, as they were struggling all throughout the first half and even got picked off. It wasn't until the end of the second quarter where Peter really started to get things going, mostly in the passing game though, taking a lot of underneath passes for first downs and even trucked his way downfield to 1st and goal. And UMass would eventually get on the board as Peter caught this ball and danced his way in the end zone, bringing it to a one-possession ball game, but Peter Griffin was definitely trying to make it 0. He came out on the next drive running through the first man that he sees every single time, eventually bringing his team all the way down to the 1-yard line, where one play later Peter would take this handoff and fight his way across the goal line for a touchdown to tie the game up. But even though that Peter was a great blocker at times, there wasn't much he could do when all of his linemen would get beat at the same time, allowing the quarterback to get sacked for a fumble that gets picked up by Northern Illinois and brought all the way back to the crib for a touchdown. Now once again making this a 2-possession ball game as they head deeper into the fourth quarter. This offense would somehow make up for it though on their very next play though, as the quarterback actually finds a man deep over the top, and he is bringing his ball all the way downfield into the end zone for a touchdown, giving UMass a little bit more life in this game. And after UMass actually gets the ball back and brings it well within field goal range with under 30 seconds left, that would be enough to send this game into another overtime, where Peter Griffin was powering his way across the goal line for another touchdown to take the lead. And it almost felt like deja vu because it was the exact same situation as the previous game. All Peter had to do was just bring his team across the goal line one more time. And after taking his handoff on 2nd and goal, he trucked his way across and won another game for the UMass Minutemen, as they would go on to close out another one 37-31. Peter Griffin having another great game with 126 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. But he also went for 13 receptions and 114 yards through the air, earning himself another National Offensive Player of the Week. And also he was working his way up the rankings as the Heisman favorite, probably because even though he was 2nd in the country in rushing yards, he was also one of the nation's top receivers as well. So Peter was really hoping that he could just continue to play great, especially going into one of the harder games of the season against Missouri. And once again, UMass is starting out this game playing shitty, throwing an interception on the opening drive that would eventually lead to 3 points for Missouri, so that by the second quarter they were down by 2 possessions, but Peter Griffin was helping to cut that down. He brought him down to the goal line on 4th and 1, where he would actually get taken out of the game. But somehow UMass still scores a touchdown, and so does Missouri. But now at the end of the third quarter, they're only down by 7 points, and the quarterback actually found a man across the middle for a touchdown to make this game 17-17. Missouri, though, was proving that they had a high-powered offense, so Peter knew that he had to do his best to try and keep up with them, bringing his team down to the goal line again, where he caught this ball across the middle and was tackled in the end zone for another score to tie the game up. And eventually this would send this game into Peter's 3rd straight overtime. He was putting the entire state of Massachusetts on his back, and even some Missouri defenders, as he brought himself inside the 10-yard line, where on the next play he would catch this ball in the flat, obliterate this first guy, and then power his way in the end zone for a touchdown. This poor kid, dude, oh my god. But this game was not over yet, and it was looking like it was about to go into a second overtime. But on this 3rd down and 7, Peter caught this ball up the seam and just atomizes this defender in the end zone, crossing over the goal line for a touchdown, winning another game for UMass in the process. And at this point, Peter Griffin is definitely establishing himself as one of the most dominant forces in the entire country, as UMass takes down an SEC opponent 37-34. And you can definitely tell it's an SEC opponent based off his rushing yards. But Peter was an absolute monster in this game through the air, breaking the school record with 24 receptions and over 200 yards receiving. But with all of the success that Peter had been garnering, some of it had really been getting to his head. Peter was out here acting like a fucking crazy person, sending quadruple text to girls, eventually getting himself blocked, which was definitely embarrassing for him. But it wasn't as embarrassing as his next few opponents were about to feel, because the legacy of Peter Griffin as a football player was just getting started. He came out in this game against FCS East, continuing to make plays out the backfield, eventually bulldozing his way across the goal line for a touchdown, making it a 14-point ball game. But he was also just as, if not more effective on the ground, trucking over multiple defenders in the end zone before halftime hits. And then in the third quarter, Peter actually takes his handoff on a read option, and he is breaking free for one of the longest rushes of his entire season, finding a way to get this ball to the outside and eventually dive in the end zone for another touchdown. And it was another game where Peter Griffin's performance had led the way for another UMass victory, winning this game 34-10, with Peter having gone for a little over 100 yards on the ground. But that performance was nothing compared to what he was ready to do on the road against Mississippi State. In another game against another SEC opponent, Peter Griffin was running like an absolute madman, breaking off the longest run of his entire career to finally get things going for this UMass offense. And then a couple plays later, he actually caught this ball underneath and ran through literally everything in his path on his way to the end zone for another touchdown on the season, taking the lead in this game 7-3. But oh, Peter was not done yet, because he would go out there and say shablaka, funning across the goal line for his second touchdown of the game to extend this game to 2 possessions. And with Peter Griffin looking like he was untackleable in this game, UMass was eventually able to run out this clock and escape Mississippi with a 14-9 victory over another SEC opponent, while Peter Griffin only had to rush 8 times to go over 100 yards. And in their next game against Liberty, it was definitely more of the same, as Peter Griffin was becoming an absolute Mack truck out of the backfield, getting in the end zone for a touchdown on UMass's opening possession. And Peter had just continued his dominance all throughout this game, picking up another touchdown later on at the top of the second quarter, and UMass even had the idea to just directly snap it to Peter. And that turned out to be a pretty damn good idea, as Peter would find himself breaking free down the sideline and was able to just dance his way across the goal line for another touchdown, making this a 26-point ball game, where finally in the fourth quarter, Peter would go in for another touchdown to officially put this game away, as UMass would go on to win this one 33-14. And Peter Griffin having another 200-plus yard rushing game with 4 total touchdowns, earning himself another National Offensive Player of the Week. But more importantly, he had helped UMass become the 18th ranked team in the country. And for those who don't know much about UMass, they are absolutely terrible, shitty ass, bad program. They're bad. Although they do send some players to the NFL from time to time, this is a school that throughout its entire history has only played in 2 bowl games. And with a 10-0 record, Peter Griffin had helped them secure their 3rd. And Peter just couldn't wait to celebrate this with his wife Lois.
Lois, I'm going to ask you this only once. Do you, or do you not, know about the bird?
Oh, God.
Because everybody's heard that the bird is the word. Bird. The bird's a word. Bird. The bird is a word. Bird.
But now at this point in the season, Peter feels like he has become as powerful as he could become out of the backfield. And he's definitely going to need to be, going into their most anticipated game of the season against by far their toughest opponent, as UMass is set to face off against Georgia. Now, even on the road against Georgia, Peter Griffin is not scared of nobody, but apparently this offensive line is. So Peter decides that in this game, he's going to have to make his impact as a receiver. But unfortunately, on this first possession, UMass gets stopped on 3rd down. And it seemed like as powerful as Peter was, there was always going to be another Georgia defender there to bring him down. So by halftime, this game was 21-0, and it was definitely not looking good for UMass. On top of that, the quarterback would come out there and throw an interception right after halftime. And UMass was just incredibly lucky that Georgia didn't find a way to keep extending the lead. So Peter knew that he had a chance to come out there and make something happen. So he made this catch and said, shablaka, get off me. Oh, this damn controller, 1 second. Get off me, and picking up a big first down. And Peter continued that throughout this drive by powering over these Georgia defenders and bringing UMass within goal-to-goal territory, eventually just steamrolling over a bunch of defenders for a touchdown to make this a 2-possession game going into the 4th. And with around 2 minutes left, Peter was trying his best to get his team back in position, even causing a penalty here that gets him down to the goal line, where Peter would eventually take the screen pass, go upfield, and pound his way in the end zone for another touchdown, giving UMass a little bit of a chance. But unfortunately, with Georgia going on to chew the clock, they would eventually put this game away, as UMass goes on to lose their first game of the season, 14-27. And Peter definitely did not have a great game on the ground, probably his worst game of the season. On the bright side, he probably had one of his best games in the season through the air. Still though, it just wasn't enough. And Peter was feeling all types of ways after the game when thinking about this loss.
I'm very easily influenced by music.
Now, unfortunately, it's looking like UMass is going to miss out on the college football playoffs. But regardless, Peter is happy that he already led his team to a bowl game, and he just kept working hard to possibly earn that Heisman Trophy. So Peter was looking forward to going into his final game of the regular season against UConn and dominate like he has all season. And at first, he definitely was, taking his ball around the edge, getting it to the outside and saying, "Get the hell off me," before picking up a big-time first down. His quarterback would eventually cap the drive off with a touchdown to make it 7-0. Then later on in the second quarter, Peter would take this handoff and find one of the widest, openest rushing lanes in history, breaking free for a long run, and ended up finishing it by trucking over multiple defenders in the end zone for a touchdown, making this a 14-0 ball game. But this offense was not done yet, Later on, the quarterback found this big tight end across the middle, and I think he wanted to be like Peter or something because he trucked over multiple guys and got his way in the end zone for a touchdown to extend the lead. And later on, it was another receiver who got in the end zone for a touchdown to effectively put this game away, with UMass going on to win this game 34-17, with Peter closing out his regular season with a 150-yard performance. The following week for the conference championship, though, Peter was kind of surprised to realize that he was actually the number 7th team in the country. And on top of that, because they don't play in a conference, they had already officially guaranteed themselves a spot in the college football playoffs. An absolute miracle of a season led by this year's Player of the Year winner, Peter Griffin, rushing for over 1,300 yards and 24 touchdowns on the season. And you would assume that means he's also getting the Heisman, but no, it goes to Grayson McCall. And Peter was definitely a little bit upset about this, considering he was still the favorite for the Heisman. But even though he got cheated like Aston Ginty, he was still widely recognized as the best running back in the nation. And at the award ceremony, based off how people were acting, you would assume that people would think that he was actually the best player in the country. I mean, people were going wild for him out there. As far as season stats, Peter was now the 3rd leading rusher in the country, while also being the top receiver in the country as far as receiving yards. Peter knows that now that he's in the college football playoffs, it's time for him to play some of the best football that he's ever played, as UMass is set to face off in their first playoff game against UCF. This UMass offense came out playing extremely well in a game that Peter honestly expected to struggle in. They would move their way up and down the field largely due to the help of Peter, eventually bringing themselves down towards the goal line where on 1st and goal, Peter would take this handoff and hurdle into the end zone for a touchdown. And yes, if you look closely, that is indeed a hurdle. But now up 7, Peter is out there just shedding tacklers, absolutely steamrolling the defense. But it's too bad that would all be for nothing after the quarterback goes out there and throws a pick, taking away points off the board for UMass, and they're just lucky that UCF wasn't able to capitalize. And with Peter making this play-saving block, the quarterback is able to find a guy all the way downfield, who has a wide open lane across the goal line for a touchdown to make this a 2-possession game. And with it still being a 2-possession game towards the end of the 3rd quarter, it seems like UMass has all the momentum. And Peter was even out here saying, hey, which he never usually does, to pick up first downs. But eventually UCF would start to fight back by picking off this pass and taking their following drive down the field for a touchdown to make it a 1-possession game. Unfortunately for them, with the time having ticked down to under 30 seconds left, this game was effectively over. And UMass went on to win their first ever college football playoff game 14-7. In a game where Peter had managed to rush over for 100 yards on 22 carries. But now that UMass has officially won their first playoff game, all they did was just earn themselves another rematch against Georgia. But Peter knew going into this game that they had a chance to win it last time. So he had a ton of confidence in his team to go into this Fiesta Bowl and come out with an upset. Peter started out this game catching the ball in the flat, saying "wang," and picking up a nice first down. The rest of the offense was also playing well as they were working together to move downfield inside the red zone. On 3rd down and 7 though, even though Peter was breaking off tacklers, they would get stopped on 3rd down and would actually go on to miss the damn field goal. And all Peter could do was just hope that that wouldn't play a big factor later on. But for now, Peter had to try and get something going for this offense, but this Georgia defense was stacked. So at halftime, this game was relatively stalemated at 7-0. But now after halftime on their very first play, their quarterback goes on to throw a pick. And one could assume that this momentum was about to shift all the way towards Georgia. But now down 14, Peter knows that he has to be the guy to make a play. So he's out there saying hey to defenders and picking up first downs as a receiver. He was also doing a great job blocking for his quarterback as he delivers a strike down the field. A couple plays later, Peter Griffin was able to muscle his way into the end zone for the first touchdown of the game for UMass and cut this lead down to 7 points. But unfortunately, Georgia had struck right back to keep it at a 14-point ball game. So Peter came out there in this drive, making his impact felt mostly as a receiver, eventually catching this pass and bringing it around the edge for another touchdown to cut the deficit back down to 1 possession. And things were really starting to line up for UMass as they went back out there and got the 2-point conversion. And on top of that, the defense came out and eventually got a stop, meaning that with around a minute left, UMass had a chance to get themselves in the end zone to win the game. And actually, this game would definitely already be over if they made the field goal from earlier. But for now, Peter was just trucking his way down to the goal line and getting his team in great position. Where on 1st and goal, Peter made a little bit of progress but got stuffed. And on 2nd down, he also got stuffed. Now on 3rd down, the quarterback just throws it up to the stands for some reason. And all of a sudden, this game comes down to a 4th and goal at the 1. Where if UMass gets in the end zone, they win. And if they don't, this game is over. So the quarterback snaps the ball and Peter runs this angle route, but the quarterback throws it to nowhere. And just like that, UMass loses in a terrible, terrible fashion. 21-15 in a game that they were literally 1 yard away. They should have just kept running the ball. And it's extremely unfortunate because Peter had played so well all season. And this was absolutely just a shitty way for the year to end. Peter only went on to rush for 40 yards in a game where his offensive line was getting destroyed. But he did go for over 10 receptions and over 100 yards receiving on this game. For the final season stats, Peter ends up second in rushing with over 1,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 99 broken tackles. On top of that, he almost went for another 1,500 yards receiving with another 10 touchdowns. Now, Peter Griffin had definitely established himself as the best running back in the history of UMass, and more than likely actually just the overall best player. And he had yet to think about whether or not he wanted to transfer somewhere else. But regardless, Peter's family was extremely proud of him for what he had accomplished.
Lois, my God, I did it!
You sure did, Peter. I'm so proud of you.
Way to go, Dad!
Yeah, you're a smart fella, Dad.
And you're a fart smeller, Meg. Let's go home.
But this was Peter Griffin playing college football. And if you want to see Peter continue his journey, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also, be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next. And don't forget to check out some of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope all of your college football and NFL teams win this weekend. And also, happy holidays. But other than that, I'm going to catch you guys next time.